It's been over 3 years. 3 years since the last new permanent game mode that was decently hard came out, which was Pizza Party. Now we have been given the Frost mode, which is now the new hardest main survival game mode. Now, I'm just gonna say it immediately, Frost mode is an insane step into the right direction for a tower defense simulator. Frost mode is not a Christmas themed mode. Instead, it is a mode themed similarly to how Frost Invasion was themed. Frost Invasion was a winter mode, however, it got delayed due to complications. Because of that, they rethemed this winter-themed mode to be where the cold invaded the spring, thus being the Frost Invasion event. Ironically enough, this event was playable for more than half of the year of 2021 and concluded in December. So, like I said, this Frost mode is similar to that, being a permanent, non-canon game mode. The developers directly stated that this is an alternate reality where the Frost Invasion event never happened, and it only happened just now for this permanent game mode. Thus, we don't even know who the Frost Spirit is in this game mode. Now, I really like how this mode is non-canon, as in the actual dialogue, it allowed the characters to be way more expressive than they previously have been, simply just because they aren't in a canon setting where they have to make things make sense. They don't force the characters to tie the stuff that's happening in the game to Lord Exo or some random character that we're just now hearing of called the Parparius the God Eater, or something like that, and I really like that. Speaking of dialogue, the dialogue in this mode was an insane improvement compared to every other survival game mode. There's more than one character in a main survival game mode narrating? What? And the characters are actually voice acted? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna say something like, "We're eating good," and glaze the dialogue here. This generally should be the standard at this point for this game, as they've done this with every event game mode. I think that the survival game modes that new players will actively be experiencing throughout the year should have multiple characters, and if not, at the very least have voice acted dialogue. For some reason, voice acting is only present in Molten mode and this mode. The voice acting is incredibly inconsistent for these modes, so I'm hoping that they go back and make a dedicated update that'll rework the dialogue, or at least voice act the dialogue on modes eventually. Again, I'm not going to say we're being treated with luxury here, but I'm mostly going on about this dialogue so much because it is absolutely a step in the right direction for this game. Now, moving on to the actual gameplay, the most blaringly obvious part of the gameplay here is that they reused a bunch of enemies from Operation Ice. I feel like this is something that people will most definitely complain about, but the people who will complain about this are also the same people with typically low IQs who are constantly complaining about no content updates throughout the year. Now, when they finally get a content update, they complain about enemy models being reused. I think we should turn on our brains here. Sure, some enemy models are reused. These are basically new enemies though, as they have completely new stats, and it's not as if they're reusing a wave structure that's identical to Operation Ice's wave structure either. Anyways, I'm gonna move on from that topic immediately since I really don't want this video to be negative, but I feel like I just had to point that out. The wave structure for this mode is actually fairly balanced too. The enemies that come out actually make sense, and it doesn't feel rushed because it's actually 40 waves. I think TDS really needs to bring back wave structures of 40 more often, as it makes the game feel too quick when less are used. Wave structures of 40 are clearly the sweet spot, as when they use wave structures of 40, the pacing actually feels correct, and it doesn't feel unfair to play or too easy to play in the slightest. This mode is actually fun to play, believe it or not. I think that playing this mode for the first time was the first time I've enjoyed playing TDS in quite a long time, even when I'm playing completely solo. Before this mode was out, Fallen, Hardcore, Badlands, and Polluted Wastelands were basically my only options to play as a higher level player. I do not have fun playing Fallen. The early game is some of the most boring gameplay ever, just for the most lackluster stun spam boss fight. Hardcore lasts too long, and I personally don't enjoy playing solo Hardcore. Polluted Wastelands is not that fun either. Badlands was the only time I could ever have an enjoyable experience with this game, and I think that's mostly because of the fun theming and enjoyable 3-lane gameplay. Frost mode changed this, and now instead of one game mode I can have fun playing, it's 2! Yay! Now, let's just compare Frost mode and Fallen mode real quick. since those are both survival modes. There really is a night and day difference here. Frost mode actually has some enjoyable gameplay in the early game, and the progression actually makes sense. I think the biggest contributor to this is the fact that there aren't 300 HP Fallens being spawned on wave 14, and you aren't sent a giant boss on wave 16. In the late game as well, Fallen mode is basically stun abuse simulator until you kill the boss, and that's it. It's not like it takes long to kill the boss, as he has fairly low HP. The only thing keeping him alive is the fact that your towers are constantly being stunned. If your towers aren't being stunned every 2 seconds, then he dies extremely quickly. The boss for Frost mode doesn't stun nearly as often, however, and it actually feels like a dang boss because he has a lot of HP. You can't counter the stuns that he does on your towers in the slightest, but it's still more fun to play than the Fallen mode even when you can counter those stuns. Anyway, I just wanted to end off with something real quick. My one concern about this. This is clearly a mode based off of a previous event made to be playable again. Cool. Reusing content instead of it going to waste. Now, what happens when they finally figure out a way to bring back old events? This and Operation Ice will almost practically be the same thing because of the reused models. Unless this is part of their move to bring back previous event modes, I don't see how that is gonna work. If you're confused, Below Natural himself said that they will eventually find a way to bring back old events and battle passes in the future. I just hope that this idea wasn't scrapped and this is our way of finding out. Anyways, this was all I really had to say. I think Frost mode is a great step into the right direction for this game, as I've said many times before, and I hope to see more content like this in the future. Hopefully, we'll see more content similar to Frost mode, maybe like a Hex mode using Hexscape event enemies, or even a stupid concept like an OG mode where a bunch of older enemies are used, like the Controlled or the Developers and Creator, stuff like that. I know that the TDS roadmap for 2026 is out, and we're already getting a hardcore rework in the first quarter of 2026. Hopefully, in a story mode and a golden mode in the second quarter of it. All of this stuff is very promising, and I really can't wait to see what the future holds for TDS after this new permanent mode was released. My name is Rastility, and I hope to see you in my next video. Goodbye.